I'm the G Plus APAC representative with the Secretariat. And well, I'm opening up, but I will be soon handing over the floor to Dave and to Kelly and to kick off some interesting discussion today. And as I was saying, before we actually get started, I would like you guys to take a minute to look around your environment to make sure that you are in safe position and you are very familiar with all the emergency access or any kind of needs you should have in terms of facing the emergency. Once you have a really good look around, then I will be handing over the floor. We'll first start with the introduction of G+. I hope most of you who are here today, I see a lot of familiar names and also some of our members. So I hope you are very familiar with G+ and what we do. And if you don't, that's all right. This is the opportunity to actually for G+ for us to get more familiar with the industry and also allowing you to know how to work with us better in the future. So next up, I will ask the current chairperson of G+, Dave Griffiths, to give us the overview or the introduction of G+. So Dave,
Sure.
if you would.
Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. I really appreciate you inviting me to today's event. It's a great opportunity to get in front of people and remind ourselves what the G+ is for and what it stands for. So I'm Dave Griffiths. I head up Safety, Health and Wellbeing for SSE Renewables, and as Karen said, I'm also the G+ chair. I've been involved with G+ for over 5 years. I've been a board member for that period, and I've been vice chair for the last 3 years, and I've just taken on the role of chair from the 1st of January. So, as I said, delighted to be here. As Karen said, I plan to give you an overview of G+. Hopefully it's a reminder to most of you, but for anybody who's not so familiar, hopefully this will get into a level of detail so you can really understand the extent of the G+ structure. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So why health and safety? So the G+ was formed by 9 founder members because you can see there's a number of incidents that are on this slide, and this was from the early sector experience in offshore wind, and clearly some significant and very sad events where, you know, ultimately some people lost their lives. So we decided that it was really important, and SSE Renewables was a founder member of the 9 around about 10, 11 years ago. That was important to put a forum together that focused on health and safety and primarily focused on getting people home safely. You know, really important task. I think it's evolved a lot over the last decade. You know, we've now got a significant membership, and I'll cover that in a second. But the platform in terms of G+ also allows us to interface with all the international regulators, which I feel is critically important at this stage as well, because we're still developing the sector. There's lots of work to do. We've developed lots of good material, which I'll cover in a few slides later. But that sort of interface with the regulator is very, very important. But it gives us all a sense of belonging. It gives us focus that we didn't have internationally on the offshore wind sector, and it gives us a purpose. And that's really important to ensure that we get people home safely. So that's the backstory to it. Next slide, please. In terms of membership, it's pretty impressive. You know, you can see our members on the top bar there, and then the associate members. So we've got 12 members, full members as it stands, and associate members. So you can see that the G+ membership are the lead developers and operators of offshore wind across the world, as well as OEMs, which is really important because they generally provide the majority of the workforce. And the OEMs are obviously the wind turbine generator manufacturers. Whilst it's not a huge organisation, it has grown significantly since 2014. And as I said, there was 9 founder members. You know, it's a much more international focus now. Originally, the 9 founder members were probably pretty much focused on UK and EU. Clearly, we've got a massive footprint now, and clearly talking to yourselves today, equally important, Asia Pacific, massive market for offshore wind. So really important that we are part of that growth, and we're there to support the sector, we're there to support the regulators, and, you know, share best practice that we've learned over the last 10 years. We're also getting more associates who are regionally focused. For example, in APAC with Equus and Vina Energy, who joined at the end of 2022. And that's a massive step forward for us. That's a real fantastic development. And that also helps us integrate very closely across the region. So it was just to give you a flavour there, but as you can see, it's all the main players across the sector, and we continue to grow. We've still got other parties who are interested in joining us as an organisation. So it's a very, very positive position that we find ourselves, and privileged. Next slide, please. So governance and structure, really important for something of this scale and this reach. So it's non-profit, the G+, so each member pays a fee and each associate member pays a fee, and that pays for the full running costs and also all the work stream delivery that we require. It pays for our events, it supports our website, and it also supports Energy Institute as well. In terms of direct support, Secretariat is supplied by Energy Institute, and the real sort of drive, as I said, was about improving safety in the offshore wind sector, providing a platform for members to come together and discuss health and safety issues. So under the structure that you can see in front of you, we've got the Energy Institute, provides that direct support that I mentioned. The G+ board itself sets the strategy and the direction of the organisation and oversees the overall operation. So we make sure that it's effective, it's delivering value for the members, and we continue to make sure we've got the right level of interfaces and the right relationships with the regulators. The regional focus groups and work streams run and develop the work of the G+, and that includes discussions on enhancing health and safety performance, sharing and learning from incidents, and producing good practice guidelines, which I'll cover on a follow-on slide. In terms of the next slide, you'll see the structure in much more detail. So it looks a little bit complicated, but it isn't. So just bear with me. So the G+, I guess it's really important to highlight the green box that you can see at the bottom. That's our Industry Collaboration Committee. So above that, we've clearly got our sort of infrastructure, our Secretariat support. But the Collaboration Committee is really important, and that also helps us have a regional influence as well, whilst we try and collaborate with local organisations. But you can see that we're interfacing regularly with GWO, with IMCA, with RUK, and various others that you can see along the bottom. And that's a really important forum for us to make sure that we've got the right connections. Since last year, there's also a chapter on specific countries, setting up as a subsidiary of the regional focus groups, and Kellyanne will cover that in a lot more detail when she introduces the work of the region. So I don't want to get into that detail because Kellyanne will cover that very, very well. We've also got 3 groups that you can see that sit at the bottom of the structure, and that looks at development, construction and operations. And they were established with the aim to support our members in different phases of the projects and expand the discussion outside of the HSE experts. So these forums are where we have the development teams, we have the construction teams, and we have our operations, our asset management teams directly involved. It's not just the safety professionals, and I think that's really important as well. We do provide support from a health and safety perspective. This is a forum for people to meet and to learn from each other. And we just had meetings for all 3 groups last month. Some of the topics that have been discussed in the meetings were contractor management, the walk to work systems. We've seen some challenges with those in not only the renewables sector, but the oil and gas sector, and also welfare. There's a big focus in terms of welfare provision for our teams that are involved on the turbines and offshore. So, you know, really significant topics and lots of detail that we're getting into to try and shape the sector. Next one, please. So we've got 4 pillars that we sit behind, and this is about unlocking the power of data. The data that we capture, and it's freely available on our website. I'm sure many of you have seen the incident data reports. You know, that's the core, that's the foundation, and that's what we deliver everything from. So the work of G+, as I've said, is based on the 4 pillars that you can see in front of you. It's deeply connected with the sharing and learning of data. And this includes the annual incident data report, which you can see as the first pillar. And that data is submitted by the G+ members from their wind farms across the world. It is anonymised, but we get a really good picture in terms of the health and safety challenges that we see out there, and that helps us drive our focus for the next pillars. So from the data itself, you can do a direct comparison year on year. We can look from I think 2016 with a great level of accuracy in terms of the data that we've captured, and also the associated trends and themes that we see, and that helps drive our programme. Last year, we held 3 separate sessions about sharing our incident data, and they were held in Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. And I really hope that those sessions did provide you with some insight of how we utilise the report and its findings, because it is really important, and that's why we look to get high quality data, and we're constantly assessing the data. And it's worth noting that as I said, the data defines our workstream topics. So we are reacting to what we see. We're obviously trying to get ahead of any challenges. So if we see near misses, high potential incidents, we'll try and target those as well from a learning perspective. And from many of the work streams and the discussions in regional groups, we can produce industrial guidelines for good practice in particular situational work process. So you can see that that's the second pillar, and that's landed really well. The guidelines give generic and minimum safety standard requirements from an international industrial practice perspective, and they can be provided as a reference for your operation, for your site, and for your project. So they're a fantastic reference guide, and some of them are in their third revision, and I always think that's a great sign that the level of detail is high quality and people want it to be updated, and we're staying on top of that. So I'd encourage you all, if you haven't had time, take the opportunity to have a look at the good practice guidelines. We've also got Safe by Design workshops, which is the third pillar, and we examine a specific topic or concern. We look at the safety controls and improvements in design in the early phases of the projects. And the last Safety by Design workshop was co-organised with our onshore sister organisation, Safety On, and we looked at manual handling. It was a really successful process. And our next focus area is not going to be classified particularly as safe by design because we've got limited influence, but because of the walk-to-work challenges that we've seen across the sector, we're going to do a deep dive review in terms of those challenges and see how we can work with the designers and the OEMs for the walk-to-work systems to make improvements. And lastly, but just as importantly, there's a web page application called Toolbox, which is also an incident sharing and learning database. So there's video content, there's Toolbox talks, there's a real wealth of information in there, and there's going to be a short introduction on Toolbox later today. So again, I won't go into too much detail, but I would encourage you all after this webinar, if you haven't accessed it, take the time out, have a look at the information, because there's information from the oil and gas sector as well as the renewable sector there. So it's a really, really good source of information. So that was the 4 pillars. Just to touch on the good practice guidelines in a little bit more detail, just moving on to the next slide. So you can see here, I did touch on some of these are already at second and third revision, but this is the current list of good practice guidelines, ranging from offshore wind transfer all the way to improving compliance in terms of basic lifting operations and everything in between. And these have been developed over the last 9-10 years with our members and our focal groups to make sure we've got the right quality information. A few of them are actually translated into different languages, including Chinese and Japanese, and we're also looking at whether we're also basically reviewing to see if there's an increasing need for translation into other languages. So that's something that we want to stay on top of and make sure that we serve our members in the sector well. The guidelines, the incident report, and the Safe by Design materials mentioned on the last slide can all be found on the G+ website. So please take the opportunity, if you haven't, to review that, because as I say, there's a wealth of information in there. And last year we also had a few more documents published, but Kellyanne again will cover that in her update. And then I think that brings us on to our stakeholder event, which is the last slide. So this is something that we really pride ourselves on. So today is fantastic. We've got a webinar opportunity to speak regionally, but this event, this is going to be our third stakeholder event, is going to be a physical event held in Paris. As you can see there, there's a pre-event reception on the 6th of March and a full event on the 7th of March. A lot of detail, a lot of good attendees. We've got representation from all the board members. We interface with the associate members, and we've also got international regulators joining that forum. So it's a fantastic event. It's a great opportunity to network. It's a great opportunity to demonstrate what we've delivered from a G+ perspective internationally over the last 10 years. And it's a fantastic platform to celebrate our successes and really, continue our focus to get people home safely. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour from me. I hope it's been useful. I've thoroughly enjoyed being here today. From a G Plus chair perspective, my objective in my term over the next 2 years is to get much closer to our workforce. I really want to make sure that the board and the focal group are very close to the workforce. We've got a good relationship and we fully understand the issues and challenges that are faced in the offshore sector. That's my ambition. I'll be pushing that from the board. We've got a board meeting this week, and it's our first board meeting since I've taken over, so very much looking forward to it. But final thing from me, I'd just like to thank you all for your support from an APAC perspective, because you've got a fantastic role to play in keeping people safe. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a fantastic webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Before we let you go, I finally remembered to ask people for doing this. I think we just allowed you the access for your camera. So if everybody's okay with it, feel free to open your camera up, and then maybe we could do a virtual photo that is the screenshot together before Dave leaves us. And I suppose I need to stop sharing, so this will allow your view to be on the screen. Hey, wow, we do have a lot of people, so this will be a fun screenshot. So I'm just gonna do it. Like, we will have the video so that we will be able to take another screenshot if this one does not turn out well, but I'm just gonna like randomly make a few. I see a few of you are still opening up, but if you're okay, let's do that now and just look at your camera and smile. Hey. So I hope I'm doing fine. Just give me another one. Technology can be a bit awkward. Okay, so I think I got everyone. So thank you for showing up, and thank you, Dave, for the wonderful introduction. So I'm gonna go back to the slide. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
I will go back to the slide now. Please bear with me. Okay. And so for the next part, Dave keep on saying that some of the thing that he's gonna leave it for Kellyanne, and so I'll leave the floor to Kellyanne to kind of introduce to you guys on what we have been doing in the region and what are some of the achievements or the plan for the future. So Kellyanne, if you will.
Yep. Thank you very much, Karen. So hi everyone. I'm Kellyanne. I'm head of QHSE for the APAC Asia Pacific region for Ørsted, and I'm also the G Plus focal group chair. I've been the chair for just over a year, so I'm halfway through my term. I've been in APAC and involved in G Plus for 6 years now. And prior to that, I was working in the UK, obviously involved in G Plus and offshore wind as well. So next slide. Yep. So just carrying on from Dave's introduction of G Plus overall. We expanded, we went global, and we started out in APAC, starting out in Taiwan in 2019. And then we branched out to Japan, and then most recently in September, we also had a dedicated group in Korea. And of course, as you can see there's much more countries to come as well that we're also supporting as the industry is growing in the region. Our role, we have been doing a regional outlook. We work with all you members and stakeholders and regulators to share best practice, to look at, whether we can identify risk at an early stage and share best practice as well. We also, because of what we've been doing in terms of new markets over the last few years, we have been working very much on early market development. So obviously working with stakeholders, sharing the G Plus guidelines, as Dave mentioned, we've translated a few and working with regulators as well. Moving to the next slide. So this is an example of what we've been doing specifically here in Taiwan is an example. We've got strong collaboration with Taiwan OSHA and ISHA, which is their Industrial Health and Safety Association. We've internationalized the good practice guidelines, so Mandarin on a few. And then, we run a lot of events such as these, workshops and conferences, on specific topics. We've previously run one on emergency response. We collaborate with IMCA, so that's International Maritime Contractors Association, to look at marine safety elements. And then, of course, sessions like today, where we'll be talking a little bit on, sharing on how we can work on training and competencies. Next slide. So this is almost a repeat of what Dave was saying. We leverage data. So we collect data, all our members contribute to it, and from the data, we can identify trends. And then what we do is we provide solutions. So a lot of these are already what Dave mentioned in terms of the work programs that we've been focusing on. Just to highlight here, within APAC, one thing that we are driving forward and we're leading on is on heat stress. And obviously, we're getting collaboration from the other regions as well. And then steel fabrication as well is an area of focus for us. We do have a lot of the fabrication sites in the region as well. Move on to the next slide. So here are some of the things that we've recently published. And we will share the slides afterwards. You can have a look at these. Some of them we have tailored for the region. So for the IOER, for example, we have added appendices for, the region, for the countries that are operating here as well. Next slide. So what are we working on in the future, and what have we been working on? What are we working on? So we kind of Karen and I have worked on this sort of a framework here. So in terms of structure, we talked about the good practice guidelines. How can we make this more available in different languages, and also sharing our data and trends. Framework is in terms of, understanding the good practice, legal compliances, and working with the regulators. And here, a really good example of what's been done in the Korea working group is to put together a session on doing a gap analysis against current regulations and these good practice guidelines. So we know what are the additionals that are required. Hardware, obviously working by safety by designs. And then it's one of the topics that we're working on today is, how do we ensure and spread workforce competence, and how do we foster a safety mindset and good training? So next slide. I wanted to give you a really quick glimpse into our performance and therefore what's our area of focus over the next year. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So this is for the APAC region. And you can see year on year, as David mentioned, we are a key market. We are a growing market. We have many, many hours that are already logged over the last few years. And this is probably going to go up exponentially as well. Next slide. Our profile of what activities we're doing also varies between Europe, US, and us. We have, over the last year, been working there's been a lot of hours worked in construction. And the hours as well, we have gone over US, and we are projected to increase as well. Next slide. As you can see the trends, APAC-wise, if we go on the TRIR by region, we have increased over the last few years. And that, link up with the previous slide in what activities are we doing. That tells us, of course, in going from development into construction, that risk is going up. We are seeing incidents that are happening. And therefore, if we go to the next slide. And then these are the trends that we are gathering. So this data, it's also very similar to our global portfolio picture as well, by the way. So, what we're seeing most is lifting operations is the top risk. And then we also have vessel operations, including jackups and barges. And so, as we mentioned earlier, using this type of data, that's when we can work together as the industry and all the other developers and members, to find solutions and sort of share lessons and best practices between us as well. Yeah, next slide. So here's I'll just spend the next couple of minutes just running through Toolbox, and this is on top of the data, the good practice guidelines that we produce. Toolbox is also a tool that is available. You can download it on your app, and it provides a lot of information. So move on to the next slide, please. So all our G+ incidents, safety alerts, and then you've got all the Toolbox talks and lessons learned in that database too. So here's just some information on how you can get access to that and what it looks like. It's also available on your app. Next slide. So I think the best advice here is to click on the link, download it, and give it a go. And as David mentioned, we are very much focusing on how can we get the information out to frontline workers. So that's why we're promoting Toolbox today. People can use it. It's on their phones, on site, on a jackup barge. Next slide. And that's how you can download it as well. Okay. Here's a quick video. Thank you. So as you can see, the video explains it so much better than I could ever do it. So I should have just passed that over to that. So that's it for the overview in terms of APAC and Toolbox and the tools. What I'd like to do now is to move on to the panel discussion today. And the topic that we wanted to talk about today was workforce competence in APAC. The context here is that, as we all know, the industry is growing, right? There are many wind farms that are being built, with overlapping timelines, a lot of steel, a lot of foundation and components to be built. We've moved from Europe, historically, as David mentioned, that's 10 years ago in Europe. And now we've come to an APAC market. It's a new market. So it's naturally expected, right, that we don't have the full skills and manpower who are new to this industry. And there may be a potential of shortage of skills and labor as well. So the question that we wanted to discuss today was, how do we ensure HSE competency whilst we're building up in markets like that? What do we see as the gaps, and what do we see is needed and what we could do from the industry? So I'm going to be the moderator today. And as you can see, we've got a really good range of speakers today, panelists. We have Jung-Kyun Lee, who's offshore HSE advisor from RWE, Korea. We've got Kevin Tyrant, who's HSE manager for Formosa 2 in Taiwan. Nick Kim, LSMS HSE manager, NCS Corporation in Korea. And Hiroki Shiga-san, who's a project manager for JFE Engineering in Japan as well. Now, I'd say regionally, spread of different developers, spread of different countries. And also one thing to note, we do have a really good range of different stakeholders too. So we've got the developers, we've got JFE Engineering, who is a contractor, and then NCS Corporation, who's a consultancy supporting the industry as well. Now, before we start the discussion, I really want to hand over to each of our panelists for them to introduce themselves and give a bit of context into their company and what their scope is in APAC. So I'll pass on to Jung-Kyun Lee.
Hi guys, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Good morning, good afternoon, guys. My name is Jung-Kyun Lee. Just call me JK. And I'm now the RWE Renewable Korea and in charge of the offshore HSE advisor. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Thank you. And then on to Kevin.
Kevin, your mic is
Kevin, you're on mute.
Oh, novice mistake. Let's start again. Sorry, as Jan said, my name's Kevin Tyrant. I work for Formosa 2 as the health and safety manager. Before this, I've been in Taiwan for 2 years and previously worked in the UK for EDF Renewables for around about 13, 14 years for all their offshore and onshore projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And Nick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Kim. I'm a CEO of NCS Corporation, which is HSE solution provider. And also I'm working for LSMS as a HSE manager. And I'm working in this industry for oil and gas industries and energy industries for the last 19 years. And I'm very happy to be here and meeting everybody here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Shiga-san.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hiroki Shiga from JFE Engineering Corporation. I really appreciate the invitation to today's forum. JFE Engineering will launch and operate the monopile fabricating factory in April, and we will begin supplying monopile for the first time in Japan. Today, I'd like to introduce JFE Engineering Safety Management as a Japanese company. Here, I and Mr. Ueno participate from JFE. I will give the presentation, and Mr. Ueno will be in charge of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot to mention that you know, please feel free to for people to ask questions to the group. So there is a Q&A line on the top bar. So please feel free to add your questions. I see there's no questions yet. And then so please feel free to ask questions, and then I will be collaborating and presenting the questions to the panelists as well. So to warm people up, I've come up with a short list in the absence of this happening right where we don't have questions. So my first question is to all of you, but maybe we can take turns to answer. You know, so what type of HSE competency and skills do you see is needed for the offshore wind industry? And perhaps if I could throw that first to JK. Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah. Well, the question is always I had been experienced when I was working at the Korea shipyard during for 14 years, and then every time I was asked this question: how do we improve the competency and skill? Actually, it's not easy and very challenging question. Well, I can say we could come back to basic and then just focus on what we can do right away. I think so. So well, for the lot of the contractor in APAC area is that they are just starting to just the first step. So not the insufficient knowledge and the background. So for them we should do cascade and then share this regulatory compliance, the standard adherence. I think so. So for that, to ensure the contractors they should have some relevant health and safety compliance, and they also should know the standards within each company or the wind farm offshore industry, like G+. So providing them to the regulatory compliance requirements and also industry standards, and then like also we can think about the good practice guide and the best practice to be shared to them to maintain well the project's success. I think so. Well, yeah. And maybe there are lots of some things we can do, and then there are still not well, think about the structure company or some big shipyard or big cable shipyard or wind turbine company later than, but there are also lots of the small company are working with us in the wind farm offshore industry also. So so starting from the HS management system establishment, also building up risk assessments activity, and the lots of some basic thing can be started with them. Yeah, I think so. That's all.
Great, thank you. And I think you touched on some really good points there, especially you know, the context that you know, what we have to engage with, right? We have small companies and we also have large companies as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I can only go on my past 2 years' experience. So what I'm speaking from is just my experience. It's not, you know, the classic case everywhere in Taiwan. But certainly, from my experience, I think if we need to bring it back to basics. The basic understanding of method statements and risk assessments, I find, is quite fundamental. I mean, I've seen some weird and wonderful risk assessments and some really good ones, ranging from a method statement with 2 lines, 2 steps, and 2 risks identified, to a method statement that's 27 pages long, means nothing, and a huge risk assessment, and every control measure is PPE. So it's there's an understanding there, but I think it's more on the training and development and to re-educate people about what we expect, because we have to take a step back and remember that offshore wind has been brought by big developers, usually from other parts of the world, and the standards that they have there are different. And it's not to say that the standards that I've experienced in Taiwan are poor, because they're not. I mean, levels of training which are required by law don't exist in many other countries. I mean, for example, a supervisor in Taiwan, if he's leading a work team, must have a certain amount of hours training in health and safety, and then obviously the rest of the team get the training on the job. What I'm basically looking for at the moment is, and I'm struggling actually in Taiwan, what I would like sort of our guys to do in the way of training is to do some basic IOSH courses, working safely, managing safely. But I'm struggling to find a provider who will do face-to-face. Everywhere does virtual courses, and I'm still old school. I like the face-to-face where people can ask questions and feel more comfortable. So I think there's a big gap there in Taiwan, which we can start to fill if the training providers come across, and just taking it back to basics, encouraging people to talk. What you have to consider is, certainly from the guys I work with, I'm Kev Tyrons, I've come from Europe, I've got lots of experience, but I haven't got all the experiences. So it's just trying to encourage them to speak up, to ask. I often sit them down and say, I don't have the answers. Give me the answers. What do you think? Asking opinions. And so it's encouraging people to be inquisitive. And if they're inquisitive, they ask the questions, and you can start training people from there. Basic understanding of the gap that I think needs filling. We struggle, as I say, for training. I mean, we do a lot of in-house training. So we have GWO standard. I think that's standard across the globe now, for access to offshore wind. And it's a really good training. Obviously, it's required. But for the electrical training, we're now struggling to find training providers. So we're having to send our staff back to the UK for training. So there's another gap there to be filled. We also do online training from Denmark for electrical awareness, etc. So we're trying to fill. It feels like we're trying to fill holes that are there, that exist, and there's a huge market to fill those holes from a training perspective.
Okay, great, thank you. Do you have any other questions? Sorry, Nick.
Yes. All right. I'm actually agree with both of you. We gotta start from the very, very basic first, because we are at very early stage of development of offshore wind, and many of different size of company has a different perspective of health and safety management system and health and safety culture. So we have to start with introduction of what this industry already have to all different size or levels of companies, and they have to understand health and safety is the key factor for the project success. So once they understand that, then we can talk about the management system, we can talk about the trainings, we can talk about better educational skills. That is the what I can say based on my experience for many years. And different phase, like a development phase, we are dealing with many of small companies and local companies. They never heard about health and safety before. And once it is started, then their clients are requested to submit or provide their health and safety management system, which is not really existing with them. And training things and everything the same. And the toolbox talk and very basic thing for many of health and safety expertise are thinking of, but for some people that is very, very new one for them. So we gotta start with the introduction of what is existing first to all different areas of industry.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nick. Shiga-san, I know you're last, so you know, I hope, do you have other views that you want to add to the group as well?
So Mr. Ueno talk instead of me.
Ah,
Okay,
yes.
so I'm Ueno. Thank you. Yeah, we agree the three other opinions before. So, and one thing I want to add is the difference, also different between ISO or some other local regulations, such as Japanese Industrial Standards, GIS. So, GIS is mainly for the quality management, but also the consolidated as a safety management and has a long history. So we would like to suggest to apply this for safety management as well as one option, if possible, when the requirements are similar or more compared to ISO. That is one another option other than dispatching our staff to foreign trainings. That is our kind of suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eno-san. Maybe this leads on to another question that I also prepared, you know, in terms of, you all mentioned that, you know, we're not starting on a blank piece of paper, right? You know, there are things that are already available. You know, so what do you think we can already draw on and then we can add and build on from what you've seen so far? And perhaps we could go around this time round to, you know, maybe Ueno-san, you would like to answer that. I think you've already answered that a little bit, but maybe you could expand a little bit more on your thoughts and some examples from your company as well.
Pardon me, could you repeat the question?
So what can we already draw on? What is already available in Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and the wider Asia Pacific that we can already use, that we can then use to build on the competency requirements?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, that is good point. And we already had our own safety management system, and it is authorized by ISO or some other Japanese laws and regulations. Then, but that is what to say, just applied for our jacket structure or some other steel structure. And our monopile factory will be started in this April. So we also planning to apply the similar kind of safety management system for this brand new factory. So is my answer to your question?
Yeah. So using a good safety management system, you know, from existing sites into new sites and new markets as well.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Kevin, you're smiling. You look like you can't wait to say something.
No, I'm just. I mean, what can we draw on? I think we should use what's common here. Certainly in Taiwan, it's the people, it's the willingness to learn. It's the fact that, you know, if you ask somebody to do something in Taiwan, certainly me when I have grey hair, not much of it left now, but when I have grey hair, if I ask a question, I'm seen as an elder person, and people will automatically do what I say. However, as I say, I'm not always correct. So it's encouraging people to talk and communicate, draw on what we have. Obviously, our management system is based on 45,001 as more star, but then we also have to look at the Taiwanese regulations, yeah, and that's when it can become slightly difficult. It's merging the two, but you know, we do the Taiwanese system's based on the same principles that we have. So it's trying to find you know, to develop the management systems, but also to be very mindful that, you know, there are existing local regulations there. But I think really it's to draw on the pool of talent that's out here. There's some really good people out here who are really thirsty for knowledge and really want to learn. And it's really having to try and encourage them to speak out. And then we can, if we can find and we can get this, the training companies in, you know, and whatever, it will be fantastic. I think that's my perspective, draw on what we have.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Nick, do you have any views? JK?
All right, I can say two things. One probably, you know, the offshore industry is kind of a new industry in Korean market. So we're not really having the standard training or competency regulations or requirements by the law. So many companies, and especially small companies, are not want to have more training than what mandatory requirement is. So that thing is something we need to improve. Maybe, I don't know, we can work together with the regulatory authorities or what, but that is something we can improve. And the other one will be the language. So what we are available in G+ is other languages, but Korean. So many people, even they want to access to G+ and to have a better understanding from best practice guidelines and other good informations from there, but that's all English or other languages. So people would have some struggling with that, and it is not really helpful for them to have you know, better competency for carrying out the, you know, high standard health and safety work.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, we need to make sure we've got the language. Yeah. Anything else, JK?
Well,
No.
Nick has already taken the good answer, so I don't have, yeah.
Great. All right, so we have some Q&As popping up here. So the top one that's being asked at the moment is, what's your view on how can regulators best support the industry in driving continuous improvement in workforce training and competency? Who wants to answer this one?
Just a little bit of clarity. When we talk about the regulators, are we talking about the local governments? Are we talking what if it's in the context? Yeah. So if it was certainly from my perspective, we try to work well with OSHA. Try to but one of the areas that I think we could maybe improve on is their understanding of the offshore industry. So I think you, like myself, Kelly, certainly in Taiwan, you see that there's a thirst from OSHA to understand offshore wind, and what we need to do is to welcome them with open arms and just explain what we do so they can understand the difficulties and the challenge that we have, because it's offshore work, and the only sort of offshore work in the area will be fishing, you know, and supplies, etc. So it's a new industry. And I think we have to sort of open up a lot more, encourage them to come and do more visits and understand what we're doing, so we can find some sort of similarities to what exists for their regulations and understandings of what we have. A typical example would be our onshore substation. It was the first time that the OSHA regulators had been to an onshore substation, and you know, obviously there are substations in Taiwan for the grid, etc. But this seemed like a new animal, but when they came, they understood it wasn't. It's just the same as what they have. Yeah. So encouragement, I think, encouragement from the regulators to come, visit, learn, and understand.
Yeah, great. Anyone else want to jump in to add to Kevin's? Okay, if not, we have a lot more questions now, so don't panic. Related to this, there's a question about how thorough how thorough should regulatory framework be to achieve the result of best practices? And it's not always best to have everything regulated, but if it's not regulated, then a lot of safety management won't entirely be met, right? So it's a really good question. So how thorough should these regulations be?
It's a bit of a tricky question, isn't it? It's a little bit of a tricky question. If someone else wants to jump in, but I mean, from my perspective, certainly working, if we put it in the context from where we were in Europe, certainly in the UK, there's a lot of regulations, but then there's also, through the time that we've had to develop them, there's a lot of guidance that goes with it. I think that's one of the gaps that I find here, is the guidance that goes with the regulations that we have. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, sorry about that tricky question, and it's sort of like no, but well, coming from G+, of course, we have a lot of European standards and European experiences, and so the part where I understand that there's a lot of international guidelines or a lot of guidance you followed in a way that you don't really need to have a very thorough framework, especially on regulations. And I kind of feel like that feeds back to the question on what can the regulators to like what can they do in terms of helping the entire safety performances and setting up the management. But coming from Owen, coming from Australia, I think that's probably less of the problem, because in Australia, you do have a very well-structured health and safety perspective on either workforce or competencies of the workers. But coming from a more Asia country, for example, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, where we have a huge gap and misunderstanding of the industry and also misunderstanding of the skill that's needed, I kind of feel like it's always the debate, right? How thorough it should be and where should we take it? And yes, it's always good to have that kind of discussion or platform set up with the regulators. But how do we really find out that sweet spot where it can save us both most? It could, in a way, it could save them less effort into having everything regulated, but it could also serve us or serve the developers when you're trying to manage your contractors. And yes, that is a very tricky question, but again, I was hoping today, these tricky questions are the ones that should be talked about. Like you said, people should be asking questions, people should be raising their concerns. And I was hoping, and as always, like G+ should be this platform where people could raise their concerns like this. And so it's really interesting to, I don't know, really listen to your opinions, or if any one of the panelists or any of the attendees here today would like to share, then that's all right. But you do have to raise your hand so that we can allow you access.
So I'm my role today is a moderator. However, I actually have a view on this. If it's in my opinion, right? So if I can jump in. So I think my view is there's a difference between regulation and approved code of practices. So do you remember in the UK, Kevin, right? In the UK, when offshore wind started, the regulators, HSE said, we want you to self-regulate. And here and legislation is quite, I want to say the wording is quite bureaucratic, right? And so keeping it at a high level, I think it got a little bit more prescriptive later. I think that's fine. So don't be too thorough in the legislation. However, what you can do is you can make a very simple, practical guidance document, correct? But what it then became is what we called approved code of practices, i.e., if you don't really know what you're doing and you want to be prescribed, i.e., if you follow all of these things, you will be meeting the legislation. However, if you can do equal or above this standard, then go for it. So I think it gives you a lot of leeway, but it also helps you guide, what we're thinking. So that's my view. I felt that it was a nice middle ground there. Any other views? I'll go back to moderator mode now.
I would love to hear from Nick and JK. For example, Korea. The reason was, yeah, of course.
Well, it's a very tricky and challenging question, Kelly. So yeah, I think the regulatory framework should be, I think, some balance with some flexibility. Because it's actually the circumstance and then industry, environmental, and then regulatory policymaker trend, and then also regional some consideration. It is always changing. So I think it's not always good. The overly rigid regulation is it could be some difficult or maybe some steeper innovation, and we could think about some balancing regulation with the flexibility is one of the some approach. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'd like to add on JK's opinion. This is my point of view, and regulators, involvement, those kind of things are, at least in Korea, it is the minimum requirements to protect the people and everything else. It is not really the top target or something. So if we are focusing to regulatory requirements too much, then maybe it's below than our expectation. So yeah, like you said, Kelly, and most of people here in this forum would like to targeting and strive to the international standard and global standard. So that might be much higher than what we actually have in our market, let's say in Korean market. But we cannot, jump from where we are right now to the very higher standard. So we need to, move step by step, and I'm pretty sure it will take some time. Yeah. So yeah, that's something we will move on, but we need to be, patient for next few certain times. I don't want to say many years, but.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Thank you for that. Really, really good discussions. And yeah, thanks for taking the difficult question. All right. So look, another question on here, which I think was touched on earlier is, what is G+'s or what is our view on language barriers? Have we identified or assessed what are the severity of these language differences?
That's a really good question. And that's also a tricky question. Yeah, I kind of feel like that question goes out to everyone today at this panel, because obviously you're all from different countries and you're based for different projects in different countries. And so I think that kind of goes back to how we should conduct the internalization of the group practice, right? Because, for example, G+, it's an international organization, and it's international in the sense that still we have a lot of the group practice that is more European or even UK centric, which is less relevant to, say, Taiwan or to Japan, in a way that because we have a lot of differences in environments, let alone there's the differences in languages. And that's always what bothers me when I try to have a certain events such as today set up to think about whether we have interpreters and how local should I be in order to gain more domestic audience, for example. Yeah, so I would say that's a long time debate. And I think the things that we can do, and there's a lot of different layers to the language barrier questions. It includes whether all the training should be in different languages, right? Should it be in Chinese, in Japanese, or should it be in Korean? What kind of languages you should use on site? What kind of languages should your documents be, right? Should it, of course, I'm sure you have languages for both your local languages and also English, because you have to say submit it to the government in a way that it has to be in, say, Korean or Mandarin Chinese. But in your own internal communication, or when you're participating in, for example, today, you have to use it in English. And I don't think that question will ever goes away. It probably will go away, say, if we are 15 years in for the APAC region for offshore wind, that we have enough of database, we have enough of local talent, so that everything is really entirely localized. But yeah, I think at the moment for G+, such as how we always wanted to know what kind of guidelines you need, which are the ones that you'd be interested in translated into, say, Korean, because we now don't have a lot of good practice guideline translated into Korean. So that kind of conversation, right? That kind of conversation and discussion should always be there. And it will always be there. And the best we can do is that we find a solution to work with you. So, Christy.
Let me drop the bomb here and then basically escalate the question. You mentioned about the training standards being translated, but one of the things that G+ aims to achieve is basically communicating with all of the regulators. Have we even considered that how many regulators outside Australia that is quite conversant in English? And if we can't even speak the same language, will they perceive the competency, the regulatory problems, or basically challenges as with the same, I guess, well, mindset as us? It's not just about translating the word, isn't it? It's about understanding the context and what is the meaning behind the word. So I think by escalating our focus on the language, it may also create a domino effect in the stakeholder engagement, and also perhaps, well, lessen the problems that we have with competency and training, because the regulators can speak the same language as us. And that's just my opinion. So what does everyone think?
Yeah,
I think it's a good point.
It's a good point, and I totally understand, and I see it, and that's why I sometimes feel like we're struggling a little bit. But I would say that's why you guys are so important. That's why our members representative, or our local partners are so important, in a way that it's not always possible that G+ as an international organization knows best of how it is done or the culture of a certain country. I mean, even I struggle with the industry of Taiwan sometimes. So yeah, I would say you're probably hoping something I'm also secretly hoping, but cannot really mention it here today. But I think, yeah, as time passes, we kind of like progress and evolve, we will get there. And I totally understand that it has to be done in a way that so that we can get more aligned with regulators in, say, Japan and Korea. And that's 100% true.
Okay. I shall move on to another question then. So this could be our last question. So this one is, you know, all the panelists, I know you've all talked about training, you know, making sure the workforce understand, you know, ISO standards, SMS, method statements, and risk assessments. So the question is, what would be an effective way to provide that training to different workforce types? So we got subcontractors, we got subcontractors, and then their own, you know, your own contractors in your industry.
Sorry, from my perspective, it's having the availability of the training. If the training is widely available and it's trained in the country's language, you know, it's an interpretation and you get that through, then I think it will be fine. As I say, I struggle to find the training providers. So if I'm struggling to find the training providers, I think, you know, the contractors and subcontractors will also do the same. I think that you fill the hole by trying to provide some of the training and education yourself, which I know certainly you have within your organisation with contractors, etc. It's education of, you know, these are our standards. This is what the standards mean. If you come to work for us, this is what you'll have to do. But it's a little bit deeper than that. It's that's an educational phase then begins with the people who you're engaging with and you're working with.
Okay. Anyone else? JK?
Well, yeah. Well, in my case, well, the Kelly view announced touched some toolbox stock for pro. So I think one of the effective way is the toolbox stock. Well, when I was also working at Shipyard throughout the toolbox stock, at that time we have something like a video ban to display the good contents and then some short video clip, and then we come close to the frontline supervisor and the workers, and then it's not just one-way communication. It's actually two-way communication between HSE management and also frontline, the supervisor and workers. It's a very effective way to utilize some video ban for the toolbox stock. Yeah, and then you know, every time we can take advantage of this toolbox stock for the commencing of the work, we can think about all some risk and hazard, and then also think about some proper safeguard in place, and also after toolbox stock also we can think about some intervene, and the stop some culture is one of the effect to prevent any injury and incident. I think so. Yep.
Great, thanks. Ueno-san or Shiga-san, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kiri-san. I'm talking. And yeah, we totally agree with you to understanding each other is very important, repeatedly you mentioned. So I just want to share the Japanese case. I mean, Japanese contractor and Japanese subcontractor. In Japan, our working culture emphasize the value of cooperativeness. So at the very basic of regulation, rules, and manners, we have the policy of working together as one team to keep each other safe. So, for example, our company has rules or greetings, uniforms, and pointing and calling, and keeping tidy and in order. I mean, the cleaning or sorting, organizing, and so on. So we say "goanzen" in Japanese for the greeting. "Goanzen" means take care, or I hope you're safe. Safety. This is the greetings instead of hi or hello or good morning or good evening. So we always say "goanzen" to wishing the safety each other. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think, small things like that every day creates a joint culture, right? So thank you very much for sharing. Nick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one thing maybe I can add in here is the culture things. So for the education and training, we need to have the safety culture first. And we need to introduce and we need to establish the safety culture program, maybe integrated with G+ training standard requirements with the safety culture program we introduced to the industries will be helpful. Because even though we have a good education or good health and safety management system, people doesn't really agree or understand of why it is there, then it is like only paper practice going to be like. So yeah, if we can introduce some kind of safety culture programs to the industry, it would be also very helpful.
Yeah. Karen.
No, I have a question regarding Nick mentioning about safety culture. I recall I had this meeting, I don't know when, and after my presentation, people are talking about how I should make that into a pamphlet so I didn't have to keep on repeating myself. And it's, a lot about safety culture or the mindset. So I guess my question is, do you think that this safety culture thing is universal, or do you think there's also like country specific in it? It's not just in a way that it reflects the domestic regulation, it also reflects on, say, the nationality or how the industry is being carried out in that specific country. Yeah, I thought it's just something I keep on thinking about, right? I mean, we've been talking about safety culture, and last year people are asking question about, the need to build up a mindset or to have the correct acknowledgement on safety. But does it mean that it has to be universal, or does it mean that there's also domestic differences?
Oh, of course, it's not something we can answer right now. But what I can say is we should have some kind of the principle of safety culture, of course. But different country or different nations are having a different perspective. So the details shall be specifically localized, of course. But yeah, that's something I can say here. But maybe in details or for the more improvement or development, we have to have a deeper discussion and yeah, thinking of this subject. For sure.
Thank you, Nick, and I think it's super relevant. So we've got the framework, and then you can tailor within each of the countries.
Yeah.
So I think that's the last question. We're running out of time. So I want to thank the panelists for for your participation and really, really value your thoughts and insights. So if you all have the sorry, not the raising your hand, if you have all the thanking, what do you call it? I can't find it, the applause. We can do a virtual applause for our panelists today. That would be really, really good. And then I'd just like to, before I wrap up, JFE very kindly also put together a presentation today because not all of us know who JFE are. So I want to quickly hand over to JFE as a bit of the closing for them to give you an overview as to what they do. But before I hand over to them, because we will run out of time later, I just want to thank everybody so much for joining the forum today. I think it has been really, really valuable to get a discussion on training and competency. And please feel free to reach out and look out for all the other forums and workshops that Karen and I will be organizing in the APAC region. So with that, Shiga-san, please show us JFE.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
I will start. First of all, I'd like to introduce Chief Engineering. Chief Engineering is one of the companies of JFE Group. We will launch a new factory this April and start fabrication of monopile. Next, please. JFE Engineering has 3 factories. Kasuoka Monopile Factory is a brand new factory. It will mainly fabricate monopile. And 2 works has fabricated large steel structures since 1970. We will fabricate transition PCs, jackets, and offshore wind floating blocks at 2 works. Yes. 2 works has rich experience in fabricating large steel structures, such as bridges, jackets, and container cranes. The established HSE management system will be transferred to Kasuoka Monopile Factory. Kasuoka Monopile Factory will start operating this April. The annual production capacity will be 100,000 tons. The new factory is almost completed and is currently under commissioning. We will fabricate mock-up to ensure a smooth startup of the new factory. It will be fabricated from this April until the end of this year. We are fabricating mock-up. The HSE management system of Kasuoka Monopile Factory will be established and improved. I explained Japan's HSE initiatives using 2 works efforts as an example. In Japan, HSE management is required to be carried out in accordance with laws such as Labor Standard Act and Ordinance on Industrial Safety and Health. And our safety management system is ISO 45001 certified, and each factory operates safety management regulations optimized to its products and work. As an example, I show health and safety management goal of 2 works at 2023. As a result, we have 1 case with non-lost workplace injury in last year. In order to achieve this goal, 2 works has set and focus viewpoint as shown. To ensure the safety of on-site work, 2 works have developed work standards. At 2 works, we educate engineers and workers based on these standards and carry out fabricating. These work standards will be transferred to Kasuoka Monopile Factory, where they will be modified and improved via fabricating mock-up. In addition to top-down initiatives based on laws and regulations, on-site safety activities are emphasized as bottom-up efforts to prevent actions. Cooperativeness is valued here, and everyone maintains mutual safety through mutual respect and to create a safe environment for everyone. Specific efforts include discipline greetings, continent calls, calling, 3S methodology, wearing uniforms, and so on. Here, I will introduce specific efforts in safety activities on site. Morning meeting and exercise by all employees improves coordination. Then risk assessment and PPE check held by team every morning. These efforts ensure that work instructions according to work standards are carried out on site and the safety management system is implemented. In addition, monthly activities such as HSC meeting, training, patrols keep and improve safety on site. That's all from my side. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Shiga-san, for the overview of JFE. Okay, with that, we have 1 minute left. So Karen and I just want to say a very, very huge thank you very much for attending today. Thank you for a very good discussion on competency. Please keep a lookout for future events. And if you have any questions or if you would like any workshops or any sessions, please reach out to Karen or myself. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Have a good day.